After 10 years abroad, true story, I returned to surprise my daughter. But when I walked into the house, I saw her on her knees cleaning the floor, bruises all over her arms, wearing a filthy apron that said, Hamilton Family MAID. And what I did next. Chapter 1. The Homecoming. 10 years. That's how long it had been since I left American soil. A decade of sunrises in foreign cities, of building companies in silence while watching my daughter grow up through blurry video calls and one-line text replies. I told myself I was doing it for her. For Maya. To give her the life her mother and I couldn't afford when we were together. And yet, as my taxi rolled through the faded suburban streets of Fairview, something gnawed at me. The house was supposed to look better than this. I'd wired more than enough money over the years. Instead, the paint was peeling, the yard was a jungle, and the driveway was cracked like a broken promise. Still, I smiled. It was her 16th birthday. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. Not even Maya. This was supposed to be my grand return. The surprise. The moment she ran into my arms like one of those reunion videos people cry over on YouTube. But fate had other plans. I stepped out of the cab and looked at the house I once called home. The door was slightly ajar. That struck me as odd. I hadn't even knocked yet. I walked in. No balloons, no laughter, no family. Just silence. Until I heard it. A soft shuffle from the kitchen and a faint scraping noise. I followed it. Then I saw her. On her knees. Scrubbing the floor. My daughter. Her back was to me, but the first thing I noticed wasn't her posture. It was the bruises, purpling up her arms like spilled ink. Her hair was tied back hastily and she wore a tattered, grease-stained apron that said, Property of Hamilton Family. House staff. I froze. Maya. She turned, startled. And for a second her eyes filled with terror, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to answer. Then recognition slowly dawned, and her lips trembled. Dad. I dropped my suitcase. Who did this to you? I asked. She opened her mouth. But before she could speak, a sharp voice came from the top of the stairs, entitled, Smug. Male. Who the hell just walked in uninvited? You better not be another one of her loser relatives. I turned. And standing at the top of the stairs was a teenager in a designer tracksuit, maybe 18 or 19, holding a protein shake like it was a trophy. You must be Maya's little penpal daddy, he sneered. Too bad you missed the party. She's been ours since you left. He didn't even flinch when he said it. But I did. And that was the moment something deep inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough to make room for the plan that was already forming in my mind. They didn't know who I had become. They didn't know what I had built. And they had no idea what was about to happen. Because I wasn't just here to visit. I was here to take everything back. Chapter 2. The chains in the closet. Maya stood up slowly, eyes darting toward the stairs like a prisoner trained to fear footsteps. Her hands trembled. I saw her flinch as the boy upstairs, I'd later learn his name was Chase Hamilton, slammed a bedroom door behind him, music thudding through the walls like a threat. I stepped toward her. Who is he? She shook her head. Don't make noise. If Mrs. Hamilton hears you, Mrs. Hamilton, my ex-wife's new sister-in-law, the woman she moved in with 3 years ago after her second divorce. I'd been sending money to that address the entire time. I thought Maya was being cared for. Where's your mom? I asked. She left 2 years ago, she whispered. Took a job in Nevada and stopped calling. I haven't seen her since. My pulse slowed. So you've been here? Alone. Maya nodded, swallowing hard. They said I had to earn my keep, that you abandoned us. They said I was trash and not family, just some leftover they got stuck with. So I clean, cook, wash. Chase said it's either that or they send me to one of those juvenile group homes. My fists clenched. My mouth was dry. But inside, I was eerily calm. The kind of calm you feel right before a storm levels an entire coast. Where's your room? I asked. She looked confused. Room? She echoed. Then she motioned toward the hallway, a narrow door under the staircase. I opened it. A linen closet. Inside was a thin mattress. No pillow, no sheets. Just a single threadbare blanket balled up at the corner and a shelf with a toothbrush. A cracked phone with no SIM card and a notebook full of drawings. All of them of a girl behind bars, looking up at a window she couldn't reach. I crouched down and ran my fingers over the worn edge of the mattress. The floor was cold concrete. They made you sleep in here? Maya nodded, holding her arm instinctively like she was trying to hide the bruises or the memories. I stood up. No rage, no shouting. That would come later and it wouldn't be noise. It would be legal, financial, public, final. Do you trust me? I asked. Her voice cracked. I don't know. That broke something in me, but I nodded. You will. And then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't take her out of the house. Not yet. Because if I removed her too soon they'd cry custody dispute. Or say I manipulated her. No. If this was going to end, it would end in flames. But on paper, with receipts, and with the law at my back. So I smiled. And said the line I'd been waiting 10 years to say. Sweetheart, I'm home. And I'm not going anywhere. Then I pulled out my phone. Because the revenge. It had already begun. Chapter 3. The cameras and the custody trap. I left that night pretending everything was fine. Maya was hesitant, but I whispered to her. Just one more day. Let me prepare. I promise. You'll never spend another night in that closet again. She nodded. And I left. But I didn't go far. Instead, I rented a cheap hotel down the street. Barely 3 blocks from the Hamilton suburban hell house. I couldn't risk tipping them off. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed to make sure their punishment was permanent. That same night, I called 3 people. Luciana Price, the best family law attorney in the state, a woman with a reputation for making deadbeat parents disappear off custody records, and abusive guardians wish they were never born. Paul Draper, a retired NYPD detective turned private investigator. He owed me a favor. From a case overseas, I helped him resolve. He would get evidence no cop ever could. Dev Patel, cybersecurity consultant and expert in remote surveillance. If the Hamiltons were going to be exposed, I needed their cruelty on camera. By noon the next day, Paul had eyes on the house. He confirmed what Maya had whispered. She wasn't just a maid. She was a servant. Shouted at daily by the boy and ignored by the adults. She ate in the kitchen after everyone else had finished. She wasn't enrolled in school. She didn't have her own clothes. The bruises on her arms weren't from falling. They were from being shoved out of the way when she didn't clean fast enough. Dev arrived with his gear. Tiny cameras went in 3 places. One in the air vent near the living room, one behind a false panel in the hallway, and one hidden in the corner of the closet where Maya slept. I didn't feel guilty. I felt justice loading its clip. Over the next 4 days, I watched the footage live from my hotel room. The things I saw made my stomach turn, but also made my case airtight. Chase screamed, "You're not even blood. You're just a stray our aunt forgot to throw out." Mrs. Hamilton once slapped Maya for missing a spot while mopping, then laughed as she made her redo the floor on her knees. Mr. Hamilton, a corporate tax fraud with a fake smile, once looked at Maya, shrugged and said, "She should be grateful we even feed her." Paul photographed everything. Luciana drafted the emergency custody petition. I filed every payment record I'd made over the last 10 years, showing the court that I'd supported Maya without fail, believing she was safe and living with her mother. She wasn't. She was in a gilded prison, run by monsters in silk robes, but not for long. On the 5th day, I walked back into that house, this time with 2 officers, a child protection officer, and a court order in my hand. Mrs. Hamilton was mid-mimosa. Chase was gaming. Maya was scrubbing the hallway floor. I stepped in. "Hello again," I said softly. Then I raised the order, eyes locked on them. "You're done." Chapter 4, the custody hearing that made headlines. The courtroom was packed, not with spectators, not yet, but with tension coiled like a snake under every polished floor tile. The Hamiltons had arrived in coordinated beige suits, smug behind their expensive lawyer. They still thought this was a misunderstanding, some emotional father making a scene after years away. They didn't realize I had brought a war. My attorney, Luciana Price, stood like a blade beside me. She was calm, confident, the kind of woman who could decimate reputations with a single raised eyebrow. Maya sat quietly between us, wearing her first brand new dress in years. Her hands trembled under the table, but when I squeezed them gently, she nodded, brave, so brave. The Hamiltons lie unravels. Their lawyer's opening argument was a performance of the absurd. Your Honor, this man abandoned his daughter for a decade. My clients generously took her in out of moral obligation. Yes, she helped around the house, but she was treated like family. I could almost hear Luciana roll her eyes. When it was our turn, she stood. Your Honor, I'd like to play a short compilation. These are time-stamped videos taken from within the Hamilton residence. They show the family dynamic in question. The lights dimmed. On screen, footage rolled. Chase Hamilton screaming, "Clean faster, you useless little freak." Mrs. Hamilton dragging Maya by the wrist, throwing a sponge at her head. Mr. Hamilton pouring a second glass of wine as Maya sobbed quietly, locked in a utility closet with only a blanket. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, his gavel frozen in hand. Luciana turned calmly and added, Maya was not treated like family. She was used like a housemaid, emotionally abused, denied schooling, medical care, and forced into labor. Her biological father, my client, was led to believe she was thriving under her mother's care. When the mother died, Maya was dumped on relatives who viewed her as a burden and a chore. Then she dropped the final blow. We have school records showing Maya was never enrolled after age 8. We have receipts proving Mr. Rivera financially supported his daughter throughout his absence. And we have testimony from Maya herself, which, Your Honor, we respectfully request to deliver privately, due to the traumatic nature of her experience. The judge agreed. Behind closed doors, Maya spoke for 22 minutes. When she emerged, eyes red but head high, the courtroom knew. It was over. The verdict that shook the Hamilton name. The judge didn't take long. Custody of Maya Rivera is hereby granted, full and permanent, to Mr. Santiago Rivera. Furthermore, this court is opening an investigation into child neglect, abuse, and fraud under the Hamilton household. The courtroom didn't gasp. It roared. Several journalists had caught wind of the story. The moment the gavel struck, they swarmed the hallway, demanding answers. Microphones, flashes, headlines forming midair. One reporter shouted, Mr. Rivera, what do you want the world to know? I turned toward the camera, Maya beside me, holding my hand. I said, don't ever assume silence means safety. I was gone, but I came back. And no one treats my daughter like that and gets away with it. That clip aired nationwide by nightfall. The story? Abroad father returns to save daughter from family slavery. The Hamiltons. They weren't family anymore. They were headlines. Chapter 5. The fire sale and the arrest that followed. The Hamilton estate went up for sale 3 weeks later. Not by choice, but by seizure. After the custody ruling, a floodgate opened. Anonymous tips, bank record audits, and a full investigation into the Hamiltons' finances. Turns out, the abuse wasn't their only crime. They'd been embezzling funds from their own family-run charity, the same one they flaunted every Easter for good press. Money meant for foster programs, shelters, and widows was rerouted into private vacations, house renovations, and offshore accounts. Over $3.7 million missing. And my daughter had been scrubbing floors in a house built on stolen hope. The dominoes fall. One by one, their world crumbled. Chase Hamilton was indicted first. Wire fraud, aggravated assault, and child endangerment. Evelyn Hamilton, his wife, tried to flee to the Cayman Islands the night before her deposition. She didn't even make it to the airport. The FBI was waiting at her gated driveway. The so-called Hamilton Foundation. Dismantled. Every partner dropped them. Board members fled. Donors sued. I watched the news calmly from my living room. Maya sat beside me, her bruises finally fading, her smile beginning to return. But revenge, in this case, wasn't about destruction. It was about freedom. The garage reclaimed one morning, a black SUV pulled up outside my modest home. A courier stepped out, handed me a single manila envelope. Inside were auction photos of the Hamilton estate. A judge had ordered everything liquidated to pay back stolen funds and damages. I flipped through the pictures. Marble statues, wine cellars, crystal chandeliers. Then I saw it. The garage, where my daughter was once forced to sleep, kneel, and bleed. Now stripped bare, the walls power washed, a real estate agent's cheap sign in the background. Potential guest house. Fully converted. Great for storage. I smiled. Yeah, I whispered. That's about right. They used it to break her. Now it was worth nothing. The final arrest a month later, the last domino fell. Chase Hamilton was arrested again, this time not for what he did, but for what he tried to do next. Using fake identities, he attempted to siphon money from a hidden crypto wallet linked to the charity's donor list. He never made it past the login screen. The FBI had been watching him since day one. They let him hang himself with his own greed, then moved in. When they dragged him out of the hotel in cuffs, his face looked nothing like the arrogant men who once screamed at my daughter. He looked hollow, forgotten, small. This house was never yours to rule. She was never your servant. And I was never the ghost you thought would stay gone. They tried to bury her spirit. Instead, they buried their legacy. And we began again. Free. Epilogue. The letter. She never sent. 3 months after the arrests, the world had quieted. Maya was adjusting to her new school. Her laughter, still cautious, was beginning to stretch longer, less guarded. She no longer flinched when someone closed a door too hard. She kept a journal now, painted again, talked about college. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning out a box of her old belongings from the Hamilton estate, I found a small pink envelope tucked between the pages of a worn sketchbook. No stamp. No address. Just one word, scribbled across the front in faded pencil. Dad. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a folded letter, the edges wrinkled from being opened, read, and rewritten many times. The ink had smudged in places, as if from tears. Dear Dad, I don't know if you're alive. I don't know if you care. But I need you to know something. They call me ungrateful when I cry. They call me lazy when I cry. They call me worthless. And maybe I started to believe it. But sometimes, before I fall asleep in the garage, I remember the way you once tucked me in, when I was 5. You made silly voices for bedtime stories and told me I could be anything. I just want to know, did you mean it? Because if you did, I need you to come back, please. They say you abandoned me, but deep down, I still hope you just forgot how to find me. Your daughter, Maya. I read it twice. The first time I shook. The second time, I wept. She had written it long before I ever returned. Long before the courts, the cameras, the arrests, and the headlines. She'd written it alone, in that filthy garage, surrounded by people who stripped her dignity down to the bone. And still, she believed in me. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my wallet. Not because I needed to remember what they did to her, but because I needed to remember what she still believed I could be. Her protector. Her father. Her answer. And now, her future. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice, and share this story with someone who needs its fire.